Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of the Perfect Game High School Notebook. As always, I'm Tyler, joined here by Colt. Colt, wow, what a weekend of baseball we had since our last show. I was up there in Alabama with you over the weekend for the Gulf Coast Showcase, but got a chance to stop in for that game 3 between Hoover and Florence and experience the Alabama version of high school playoff baseball, and that was one heck of an atmosphere.
Yeah, it's been like that all year around here. Been like that all across the Deep South, everywhere I've gone. Tons of good baseball, tons of talented players, and the community support you've seen across the states. Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama. It's been unreal, really. I mean, coming from Colorado myself, these kids are playing in front of hundreds and hundreds of people every night, and it's normal for them, and it's a great atmosphere. And high school baseball is really thriving. But that series we got to see was just another great example of that with Hoover, winning Game 3 and it kind of resurrecting a season and now taking it all the way to a state championship run there for the Bucks as they move on to Montgomery this week on Wednesday.
Talking about awesome atmospheres, that brings us right to the top of the rankings where we once again have a new team. Barb, they won their 11th state title over the weekend. They wrapped up the 5A championship in Louisiana, finished with a 39-2 record. I talked to Coach Cecchini from Barb, and he mentioned that there might have been 6,000 or 7,000 people there from that semifinal game. From the videos I saw, I wouldn't doubt it. That semifinal game against Sam Houston, that was unreal. Sam Houston had some huge defensive plays throughout, got a great performance from their starter. They'll all in likelihood stay in the top 50 when we get to the end of the year. Jack Walker, he went 10 no-hit innings to cap off one of the best pitching seasons in Louisiana history. He didn't allow an extra base hit in 84 innings this year, struck out like 125. Had a crazy like 0.4 ERA and finished 13-0. They went to the bottom of the 11th in that game, tied 0-0. Barb ended up walking it off on a gutsy play. Kid took off home on a throw across and fielder's choice snuck in there. And then they went ahead and cruised in the title game. They won 5-0 West Monroe behind a shutout from Gavin Goodry. So Barb, super talented club, deserving of the number 1 spot. We still got a month left in the high school season, but they're in a good spot to stay up there at number 1 moving forward. Looking past Barb, you got OLSM. They're up to 3. They're now 30-1 in Michigan. Thousand Oaks, they didn't lose a game. They slipped the floor. They're 22-0, cruising through their regular season. And they're at 5. Stoneman Douglas, another exciting finish that we had over the weekend. They went toe-to-toe with a very talented Palm Beach Gardens team who we've had in and out of the rankings. They were down to their last strike. Gavin Conicello doubled to tie the game. And then first pitch and then next at bat, Santiago Ordonez, who serves kind of as a leader for them behind the plate. He had no doubter out to left and to be able to send them to states, which here in Florida is the Final Four. So puts them 2 wins away from winning the 7A state title. So much talent on that team. I'm excited to get to watch them here in Fort Myers again this week. They could end up matching with the red hot Spruce Creek team who came in at 32 for us this week. Both of those teams can win the semifinal matchups on Friday. They'd match up on Saturday for the 7A state title here in Florida. Moving on again, Madison Central, they slide up to 7. They took care of business after going to a Game 3 last week, and they're only a few wins from a state title. Lake Travis up to 8. They continued through the playoffs in Texas. Big jump for Orange Lutheran up to 9, and then Jackson Prep, who won the state title, moves up to 10. Colt, we got a big-time matchup coming up in Cali next week. Want to give us the details?
Yeah, just kind of with the way that the release of this show works and the show coming out on, a little bit later in the week, with the way the Trinity League has their schedule set up, we have a big matchup we wanted to touch on before it happens next week with Jay Sarah and Olu. Like you said, Olu coming in this week at number 9, Jay Sarah up to 13 in this week's rankings. And they got a 3-game set, starting Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week with both teams, as it stands right now, 9-0 in the Trinity League, which, we've documented on this show before, one of the toughest, if not the toughest league across the country there. And so, I mean, big time matchup with those two going head to head, right? Like I said, both 9-0 and don't want to look ahead of their opponents this week, but definitely maybe one of the biggest matchups in high school baseball across the country this year coming up next week with those two matching up. And then, like you said, number 10, Jackson Prep wraps up their 4A MAIS state championship last week. They cap off a 35-3 season with a big 2-game win, two-game win in the 3-game series against Madison Ridgeland Academy. To kind of wrap off a good season there, and gives us two Mississippi schools there in the top 10. You can only wonder, Madison Central kind of finishing up their season still, but what it would look like if Jackson Prep and Madison Central squared off in a 3-game set would be pretty interesting with those talented rosters. Moving on to 18 there in the teens, Heritage Hall. caps off a 4A state title there in Oklahoma. Kind of slugged their way through the final 3 games. They're averaging 10 runs a game. We touched on the pitching so much with that squad, but the bats come alive for them late as they power their way to a state championship there in Oklahoma. Moving into the 20s, Auburn kind of gets a revenge win this week. They went back against Central Phoenix, a club that had beaten them earlier in the year for the area title. But Auburn gets the best of them there in the playoffs in the state semifinals here in Alabama in 7A as they sweep Central Phoenix to advance to Montgomery there. Well, they'll actually play Hoover, who we touched on earlier in the show. Then moving into the early 30s here, we've got Trinity out of Louisville, Kentucky. They're 28-1, 12-game winning streak, including going 5-0 last week for that club, and definitely a club to keep an eye on as they head there towards the back half of their regular season. Super talented club. They're red hot and looking to keep it going there in Kentucky. And then moving on to 33, we've got American Fork out of Utah. This is a club that's just now getting into their playoffs there in the 6A bracket in Utah. But, Cade Carpenter's kind of let them on the mound. Well, offensively, they're swinging to a 385 tune. If you're Coach Ingersoll and the Caveman out there, you got to like your chances anytime you go up against a club when you're swinging a red hot bat like that. So,
once again, 5 new teams this week, starting with Parkview 42. They returned to the rankings team. We had high in the preseason rankings, kind of up and down regular season, but they've been on fire in the playoffs. Took care of business in the state semis. Huge offensive output from their whole lineup. Starts with Ryan Spikes. He hit 3 home runs in that series. They'll play for the 7A state title in Georgia. Behind them a spot, Berkeley Prep at 43. They've made some waves in the Florida playoffs. They had a good regular season, lost some games to some tough teams, but, they knocked off both Calvary Christian and Lakeland Christian, 2 teams we've had in the rankings all season long. They're in the 3A playoffs. They'll match up with the First Academy in the region finals today, who will be a really tough opponent. They're 28-1. Looking ahead, Jenks comes in at 47 out of Oklahoma. They won the state title in the classification that Owasso's in, who's been in the rankings for a good bit. Alhambra comes in at 48 out of Arizona. They beat both Red Mountain and Hamilton to reach the state championship. Great story there with that team. Great chance to win the state title there in Arizona. And then at 50, Charlotte Christian, another team we had in the preseason polls, they rejoined the rankings after they won the 4A state title in the Independent Schools Association there in North Carolina. So that'll do it once again for us in the High School Notebook. Only a few weeks left in the high school season all over the country. Make sure to continue to tune in with us each week as we look at teams winning state titles all over the country. We'll catch you again next week.